I think poetry's dangerous. I now have this urge to go home and rip open my vacuum and start poking about, see what I might find.
Wear a dust mask if you do. Recommendations.
Yeah.
Pro tip.
Okay. We're going to end our evening, but it's not over yet, with George Elliott Clarke, Toronto's Poet Laureate. George is and I'm reading straight from the text verbatim, a writer and scholar, and he was born in Nova Scotia in 1960. He is the E.J. Pratt Professor of Canadian Literature at the University of Toronto, and he is currently a visiting professor at Harvard. His many honors include the Governor-General's Award for Poetry, appointment to the Order of Nova Scotia, and appointment to the Order of Canada at the rank of officer in 2008. His major titles include Whyla Falls, pronounced correctly, I hope, Whyla Falls, Execution Poems in 2000, Blues and Bliss in 2008, I and I in 2009, and all of these are works of poetry. And his newest book of poetry, Illicit Sonnets. That's very original. The king of sonnets. Illicit Sonnets. And will be coming out in 2013. And he was appointed Poet Laureate of Toronto in November 2012. Please welcome George Elliott Clarke.
I agree completely, 110%. I want to thank Martha once again for that wonderful introduction and for having us all here this evening. And I want to thank all my wonderful colleagues for the beautiful poetry that we have heard tonight. And also want to thank Ayesha, who was actually the first person to come up with this idea that we have a night to honor Robbie Burns. So yeah, round of applause. She first came up with this idea, approached with the idea back in July. And so here we are. It's a little bit colder than it was in July when we were proposing, or you were proposing the idea. But here we are. So thank you all very, very much for your attention and interest. And so on. I unfortunately chose, I think, the longest poem by Bobby Burns. And the reason why that's unfortunate is because I also have absolutely no clue how to read the accent. But I do, that does allow me to say, in relation to something that Anna said this evening as well, that Bobby Burns is extremely important in English poetry, or British poetry if you prefer, because of the fact that he really introduced the idea of the accent. He introduced the idea of a different sound of this language called English. And so in reality, we can say that he set the mold for all the other non-Anglo-Saxon original speakers of English to be able to claim the language for themselves and to write poetry in it. In a sense, he's the first post-colonial poet. We could say that as well. So forgive my poor pronunciation again, please. But here is Tam O'Shanter, which is actually a ballad.
Tommy.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. And I'll add, being from Nova Scotia, I might claim a little bit of the Scottish, et cetera, New Scottish. It's New Scottish is what it is. So, when Chapman Billies leave the street, and drowsy neighbours meet, as market days are wearing late, and folk begin to tack the gate, while we sit bowsing at the nappy, and getting foul and unco happy, we think not on the lang Scot smiles, the mosses, waters, slats, and stiles, that lie between us and our hame, where sits our sulky, sullen dame, gathering her brows like gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. This truth fand honest Tam O'Shanter, as he frae ire a night did canter, out ire wham ne'er a town surpasses, for honest men and bonny lasses. O Tam, hadst thou have but been sae wise, as ta'en thy ain wife Kate's advice, she told thee weel thou was a skellum, a blathering, blustering, drunken blum, that frae November till October, aye market day thou wasna sober, that ilka melder with the miller, thou sat as lang as thou had siller, that every naig was caught a shoe on, the smith and thee gat roaring fell on, that at the Lord's house, even on Sunday, thou drank with Kirkton Jean till Monday. She prophesied that late or soon thou would be found deep drowned in doom, or catched with warlocks in the murk by Alloway's old haunted kirk. Ah, gentle dames, it gars me greet to think how many counsels sweet, how many length and sage advices the husband from the wife despises. But to our tale, I mark at night Tam had got planted unco right, fast by an ingle blazing finely, with reaming swats that drank divinely, and at his elbow Selter Johnny, his ancient trusty draughty crony. Tam loved him like a vera brither. They had been foul for weeks together. The night drave on with sayings and clatter, and aye, the ale was growing better. The landlady and Tam grew gracious, with favor secret, sweet and precious. The Selter told his queerest stories. The landlord's laugh was ready chorus. The storm without might rear and rustle. Tam did not mind the storm a whistle. Care, mad to see a man say happy, and drowned himself among the nappy, as bees flee hame with lays of treasure. The minutes wing their way with pleasure. Kings may be blessed, but Tam was glorious, over the ills of life victorious. But pleasures are like poppy spread, you seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever. Or like the borealis race that flit ere you can point the place. Or like the rainbow's lovely form, evanishing amid the storm. Nigh man can tether time nor tide. The hour approaches Tam on ride. That hour on night's black arch the key stain. That dreary hour he mounts his beast in. And sick a night he takes the road in, as ne'er a poor sinner was abroad in. The wind blew as 'twad blown its last. The rattling showers rose on the blast. The speedy gleams the darkness swallowed. Loud, deep, and lang the thunder bellowed. That night a child might understand the dull had business on his hand. Wheel mounted on his grey mare Meg, a better never lifted leg. Tam scalped on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire, whilst holding fast his guide blue bonnet, whilst crooning over some old Scots sonnet, whilst glowering round with prudent cares, lest bogles catch him unawares. Kirk Alloway was drawing nigh, where geese and owlets nightly cry. By this time he was crossed the ford, where in the snaw the chapman snored, and past the birks and maple stain, where drunken Charlie breaks neck bane, and through the winds and by the camber hunters fan the murdered bairn, and near the thorn aboon the well, where Mungle's mither hanged herself. Before him Doon pours all his floods, the doubling storm roars through the woods, the lightnings flash from pole to pole, nearer and more nearer the thunders roll. When glimmering through the groaning trees, Girk always seemed in a blaze. Through Ilka bore the beams were glancing, and loud resounded mirth and dancing. Inspiring bold John Barleycorn, what dangers thou canst make us scorn. With tippenny we fear nigh evil, with Uskabai we'll face the devil. The swat sight reigned in Tammy's noddle, fair play he cared not dells a bottle. But Maggie stood right near, right sere astonished, till by the heel and hand admonished, she ventured forward on the light, and wow, Tam saw an unco sight. Warlocks and witches in a dance, nigh cotillion brent new from France. But hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys, and reels put life and metal in their heels. A winnock bunker in the east, there sat old Nick in shape of beast, a towsy, tight, black, grim, and large. To give the music was his charge. He screwed his pipes and gart them skirl till roof and rafters did dirl. Coffins stood round like open presses that showed the dead in their last dresses, and by some devilish cantrip sleight, each in its cold hand held a light by which heroic Tam was able to note upon the holy table a murderer's banes and gibbet errands. 'Twas spun laying we unchristened barons, a thief new cut it from a rape, with his last gasp his gab did gape. 5 tomahawks with blued red rusted, 5 scimitars with murder crusted, a garter which a babe had strangled, a knife a father's throat had mangled, whom his ain son of life bereft, the grey hairs yet stuck to the heft, with mere a horrible and awful, which even to them would be unlawful. As Tammy glowered, amazed and curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. The piper loud and louder blew. The dancers quick and quicker flew. They reeled, they set, they crossed, they clicked, they click it, till Illa Carlin swat and reek it, and coosed her duddies to the work, and blink it at it in her cirque. Now Tam, oh Tam, had they been queens, a plump and strapping in their teens, their sarks instead o' creasy flannen, been snow white 1700 linen, their breeks of mine, my only pair, the ends were plush o' gilt blue hair, I would have given them half my herdies, for a blink of the bonny birdies, but withered beldams, old and droll, rig woody hags, what speen a foe, lelping and flinging on a crummock, I wonder didn't turn my stomach. But Tam ken what was what for brawly, there was a winsome wench in Wally, that night enlisted in the corps, long after canned on Carrick's shore, for many a beast to dead she shot, and perished money a bonny boat, and shook both meikle, corn and beer, and kept the countryside in fear. Her cutty sark a paisley hern, that while a lacy she had worn. In longitude though sorely scanty, it was her best, and she was vanity. A little ken thy reverend granny, that sark she caught for her wee nanny. With 12 pound Scots, 'twas her riches, whatever graced a dance of witches. But here my muse her wing Moncour, sick flights are far beyond her power, to sing how Nanny lapped and flame, a supple jade she was in string, and how Tam stood like unbewitched, and thought his very een enriched. Even Satan glowered and fidget for fame, and hutched and blew with might and main, till first a kuiper sent another, Tam tint his reason out together, and roars out, "Weel done, Cutty Sark!" And in an instant all was dark, and scarcely had he Maggie rallied, when out the hellish legion sallied, as bees biz out with angry fight, when plundering herds assail their bike, and open pussy's mortal foes, when pop she starts before their nose, and eager runs the market crowd, when "Catch the thief" resounds aloud. So Maggie runs, the witches follow, with money and eldritch screech and hollow. Ah Tam, thou get thy fearing, in hell thou roast thee like a heron. In vain thy Kate awaits thy coming, Kate soon will be a woeful woman. Now do thy speedy utmost make, and win the keystone of the brig. There at them thou thy tail may toss, a running stream thy dare not cross. But ere the keystone she could make, the fiend a tail she had to shake. For Nanny far before the rest, hard upon noble Maggie pressed, and flew at Tam with furious ettle, but little wist she Maggie's mettle, as spring brought off her master hail, but left behind her ain grey tail. The Carlin caught her by the rump, and left poor Maggie scarce a stump. Now, while this tale of truth shall read, each man and mother's son take heed, whenever to drink you are inclined, or cutty sarks run in your mind, think you may buy the joys o'er dear, remember Tam O'Shanter's mirror. Ron Burns is the house. We've got a few minutes left, so I'll read a few poems. I'll read a couple from this book. Illicit